So for those of you that don't know Global Washington, just to let you know, we're a membership association. We have 160 members, all who have a presence in Washington State and do work to improve lives in developing countries. The Foster School is a member of Global Washington, which is great, and many of you here. So what we do is strengthen our members so that they can do their work in developing countries in a stronger way. So we often do events to bring people together to strengthen the connections among our membership and to raise the profile of the issues and the work that our members are doing. So with 160 members, you can imagine people do things from everything from climate change to the work that Hain is doing to global health, education, and so on. Our members work in 200 countries and territories around the world. So the way we organize our work is that each month we pick an issue and we create an issue brief, an overview of the issue, and then cluster our members that are doing that work. The topic actually of this week is around food security and climate change this month that we're doing. And we had an event last week that was a panel discussion on the topic. So in addition to our issue campaigns, we also do a series which we call Voices from the Field. And that's what Hain is here for in particular, where we definitely try to raise the profile of the voices of people doing the work in developing countries and honor their work as such. So, and Hain's topic actually fits into one of our priority issues for Global Washington. We have 10 priority issues, and her topic is cross-cutting on many of them, but around human rights in particular, gender-based violence, and all of the other work that she does. But those two in particular are priority areas for Global Washington. The other thing Global Washington is known for is our annual conference, which there's a flyer out there, but it's coming up on December 6th. And at Bell Harbor, it's about 450 people, great speakers, and Foster School is actually one of the sponsors giving an in-kind donation for our Fast Pitch Prize, which I'm very excited about. So I hope you all can come to that as well. So with that, I'm actually going to turn it over to Nick to introduce Hain more formally.
All right, thank you. So I'm not going to spend a ton of time introducing Hain because I think she'll talk a little bit about her own experience, but I wanted to talk about Pangea Giving and the amazing opportunity really that we've had to bring Hain here to talk about the work that Women Peacemakers is doing. Pangea Giving, for those of you that are not familiar, is a community of individuals that are really interested in supporting social change throughout the world. We have about 60 individual or family members who are part of a giving circle, and these members put money into a pool that we then allocate to a group of organizations around the world. And we work in 3 different regions, Southeast Asia, East Africa, and Latin America. Hain is one of our partners from one of the regions that we work in. And as far as kind of the model that Pangea has, we don't fund any particular issues. So Hain here is going to talk about Women Peacemakers' work in community dialogue, gender-based violence prevention, and maybe a little bit about your ethnic conflict resolution work. But with Pangea, what we try to do is identify partners, and when we say partners, we refer to our grantees, which often confuses a lot of people as well. But and we try to identify partners that we can build trust with and build relationships with. So we work with small community groups in the different countries where we fund, and these groups are focused on the issues that they self-identify as the needs of their communities. So we're not going in anywhere and saying that we want to fund girls' education or agroecology, but we're really putting trust in organizations like Women's Peacemakers and Hain to say, this is what we need in our community. We just need the capacity, the funding to do this work. And so we're really lucky that in 16 years we've got to identify and work with a whole bunch of really exciting partners doing amazing work throughout the world. And Hang is just one example, but one incredibly exciting example. We've been partnered with Women's Peacemakers since 2014, and that's another thing that we try to do as well, is build lasting relationships with our partners. We're funding organizations for 5, 6, 7 years, and really helping them grow and be phenomenal examples of community development. So I don't really want to take up too much more time, and I'll just hand it over to Hang so she can talk a little bit about who she is herself and Women Peacemakers, and then we'll have our Q&A as well. But yeah, we're very excited that you're here. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Wow, so great, it's such an honor to be here, and thanks specifically to Pangaea Giving for inviting me to Seattle. So it's the first time to be in Seattle, and also to Global Washington for having me here for the voices from the field. So I probably have to accuse that I need to stand up and see the slide. Okay, so we just very briefly, about 10 minutes or so, to just introduce you to who we are, what we are working on, the issue that we are working on right now, and very briefly about that, and then we can open up for discussion and talk about related topics on that, specifically on gender and women issues and on peace and conflict transformation back in the countries. Okay, great. So, well, which is a little bit about who is Women Peacemakers. In short, we call it WPM. So WPM, we originally a group of these young, active students at a time, both male and female, and who are just getting trained on all these conflict transformations and gender-based violence and all that knowledge. I was so excited to share it with the communities. And later on, with the support from all these senior long-term peace builders in the country at that time, then in 2000, these groups come together and go out to the community and trying to share what they have learned, especially on domestic violence, raising awareness on that issue, particularly because I think in 2000, as you may know, Cambodia just got out of finally what is called the negative peace, that all of the Khmer Rouge cadre integrated to the government, and the Pol Pot at the time just passed away in 1998. So there's a whole bunch of issues that is going on back in the countries, the post-conflict country. So one of which those issues are the issue of women and children and the cycle of violence that is happening at that time. So these young groups, they continue to go out to the communities and raising awareness at that time of domestic violence, of how to deal with conflict in the communities in a way that is non-violently and bring peaceful harmony to the communities. But later on in 2003, finally all of these groups come together with the support of our long-term peace builders such as Suyheang Kry at that time, to then found this organization and become a Women Peacemaker organization that registers formally with the ministry, and in 2003. So since then, we've been working on the issue of gender and peace in the countries, and particularly working to support the women and youth empowerment. So at that time, we focused a lot on the changing of attitude and behaviors by raising awareness on the issue. Because at that time, it's really a critical moment that we really just get out of war. There's a lot of things that we need to learn and catch up with the world. So that is how we begin the organizations. And our Women Peacemakers, our core value is three. One is that we believe that women are fundamental to positive change. That either every step of the development, leadership, peace building, decision makings, and all that must have an equal partnership between men and female, men and women in that one. So women is fundamentally important in the process of that. And second is that peace must be begin with us. Without finding peace in ourselves, it's hard to find peace outside. So that is the value that we keep embracing on, and that is how keep us moving as a team, as a staff, and continue engaging with the communities. And lastly is that we all believe in be mindful. We use nonviolence as the key principle for us to keep reminding ourselves that we are very mindful of those values and belief as a gender advocates, as a peace builder, to stick to nonviolence in whatever cases. So, and especially to continue to learn all throughout this process. And at Women Peacemakers, we have particularly we're focusing on two main semantic issue. Firstly is on gender and women issue, and second is on peace and conflict transformation. They are intersectional, in fact, which means that even with the gender and women issue, we have components of peace building and conflict transformation into looking at that, have a lens into looking at that. And even in our peace and conflict transformations program, we also have a gender lens into looking at it. It's actually intersectional. But at the same time, we also identify that youth empowerment, youth is the key agent of change in the countries. In Cambodia, about 70% of the population are actually below 35 years old, which means those who were born after the Khmer Rouge time, the Khmer genocidal time. So it's really a critical moment that Cambodia is actually a very young country. So at the same time that we're working with the communities, we're also working with the youth to ensure that they become an agent of change as they moving forward, becoming a leader of the country. So how are we going to work on this program, two main programming, is through these three approaches. So we're seeking knowledge through research and analysis, and also secondly, as we learn from those knowledges, we share it through trainings and communicating with the communities and sharing all those with the community as well. And lastly, using all those knowledge and things to mobilize those knowledge and by networking and working with the communities and bring it to the stakeholders who might be interested and probably cause some influential in the change of attitude and policy. So this is what we have been trying to really understand. How are we going to approach those two main semantic issue that we're working on right now. So back to the gender and women issue that we are working on right now. As probably you may have known, gender-based violence is really an issue throughout the world. Gender stereotypings is really cutting down across all ages, all ethnicity, all classes, economic classes, and not just something that happened to those with economic disadvantages, but also in the rich country and all that things as well. So it's not different back in Cambodia. So in Cambodia, one in five women still suffer from physical and sexual violence in her lifetime, and that 1 in 3 women continue to suffer from emotional violence in the countries. And I think all these gender-based violence that are taking place, it's not something that is being sustained by, patriarchy society and the systems and male and all that resistant power dynamics, but also particularly in developing country like Cambodia with all these traditional type of values that we need to stick on with conservative things. It also be reproduced and produced by the female reproductive role itself. So in Cambodia, about 50% of the women, and compared to only 27% of the men, who still believe that there is a justification reasons to be the wife. Simple reason like the wife were home and then not being able to be ready with the dinner and stuff, and when a husband coming and then not seeing the food is ready, so then there is also a justification for hitting her or doing violence at home and stuff like that, or probably something like not taking good care of the kids, for example. This simple reason can also justify some sort of violence at home as well. So the acceptance of this type of violence among women it's because of these like reproductive role that women feel very stick on, like have to perform, and if we don't perform it, there's some sort of guilties and deservedness that you should be, having that type of violence against her. So with all of these things, that's why what the work that Women Peacemaker do has been doing over the last decade and a half is about these trying to change and raise awareness of the issue, and that actually domestic violence or any type of violence against women is unacceptable, and things need to be changed in these perceptions and attitudes, and because of that can also change the behavior. So we have been working a lot on this issue over the last decades and a half. So there's some sort of changes in terms of the community that we're working with, and then now as we're moving forward, we're also seeing that actually produce a more sustainable, bigger impact in the communities. That we need to also ensuring that there is a supportive communities, a system in place that can also help to reduce some, ensuring that there's a prevention mechanism out there to really tackle the issue without having to wait for someone from the outside going there and support. So it should be focusing on that community as well. So then we're working on this gender-sensitive mediation as another type of preventive mechanisms to address the issue. So we're just starting it last year, and then trying to work more in the communal level, because in Cambodia the domestic violence law also allow for the mediation process to take place, but only within felony cases. It's not criminal charges. So but a lot of issue happening around this one is that even though in the country we have these at the community level, the reality is that whenever there is issue, people go to the community hall, and then that is the closest access to justice for communities. But going to the court is something that we very resistant. There's a lot of issue taking place that making the entire community doesn't really want to go to the court. If possible, they will escape that. I think it's a lot of things that it's a combination of so many dynamic that making this trust has been like, no. It's also, the cost from the Khmer Rouge time, the social fabric, the social cohesion in the country were completely broken down during the Khmer Rouge time. There is no trust, much trust between the people and the state and all that things, and even between the communities members and stuff as well. So then I think it's really important to build these supportive communities and a system that can allow for a more sustainable type of preventive mechanism at the community level. So what we have been doing is around these issues on the preventive mechanisms. Our skill and experience is in that, and not yet in the responsive even though our skill and experience is not in responsive mechanism, providing services or shelter or that, but we have network. So we have a group of network that also working on that we can, if we receive any cases like that, we referring to the networks, and then they will proceed. So so how are we going to do this is that we use varieties of things that we engage with the communities. So we engage with the community through that trainings and stuff, but also using trying innovative approaches, like community experiential learning outdoor, going to campaigns and trying a different place, because I think changing the attitude and behaviors of the people is very challenging. We need a transformative space. We need a space that allows for that experience to take place, empathy to take place. So we test a lot of things. We use campaign to encourage people to be with the nature and really try to see and feel that how it's like to be that person, in touch with the community by working with all these youth. And also we use forum theater, for example, because sometimes it's really hard to talk about the issue that they are facing. So then forum theater probably is a type of artistic approach that we can express our issue in a way that not naming others, that type of things. We also use some sort of, engaging voting video at nighttime with the communities in the communities, and when we watch it and we do the forum theater at night, all the community come and also watching that as well, and because that can allow for engagement with the communities. So that is the type of things that we've been doing, and after they gain some experience and knowledge on this issue, the second step is that they need to take actions when we do work with the youth. The action ranging from they doing some communities mini projects, like teams going to the communities and sharing knowledge and all that things, or whatever issue that they want to tackle on. And second would be take action in the campaign and stuff. This is actually a wide weapon campaign. It's a 16-day campaign to end violence against women, and it's a group of youth who are coming and then they writing, their speeches about against the violence against women and stuff. So they take actions in some form of campaign and stuff. And yeah, so stuff like this that they've been doing, they're taking actions in terms of campaigning and stuff. And this is just photo from our gender sensitive mediation type of work. We work with the commune dispute resolution committees, which mostly comprising of the commune chief and the commune councillors. The challenge is that most of these committee are all male, and then when it's issue with on work cases abroad, then they send it to the female one, but then she was not part of the committees. Anyway, so what we do is that we try to advocate for ensuring that there is a female members in the communities, and that when there are cases, then she needs. Everyone needs to be well trained, but at the same time to be very sensitive to gender issue that were brought by the women's. So this is just examples, and we also, in terms of the second issue that we are working on right now is the peace and conflict transformations issues that we are working on. Well, I think all of you may have known, if we talk about Cambodia, we all know Khmer, right? Yes, all Khmer, but actually Cambodia is also a diverse country as well. So we have indigenous groups, indigenous people who are in themselves, they have like 24 sub-ethnic groups, like sub-indigenous group as well in the northern part of the countries and across the country as well. And then we have ethnic Chinese, ethnic Vietnamese. We have Cham people who coming, during these Cham empires, which were the former Vietnam country at that time. Then as they locked the countries, and then they moved down to Cambodia and some other part of the world. So they all these forming the current Cambodian society. So, but then and what is interesting is that brought us to the issue of interethnic is that I've been looking at things. It's really interesting that everyone have an opinion about the other, who are different from us, all the time. So the Khmer have an opinion toward the indigenous that they are, oh gosh, they are living up there, they don't know anything or whatever. Everyone have an opinion toward the others in a negative way, stereotypings and all that thing. So as we're looking at it, and a more like that caught us into looking at this peace issue of peace in terms of interethnic, is that we saw a lot of like hate crimes, hate speech, or all these things that coming from, especially between Cambodia and Vietnam. Even though a lot have been, toward the Cham, or to stereotype toward the Cham, stereotype toward the indigenous people, stereotype toward the Khmer Crown, for example. So it's somehow, as we do dialogue, people just say, everyone seems to have like discriminations, one part or another toward the others. So, like, if we talk about Cambodia and Vietnam, for example, then there are cases of violence taking place. Like, for example, the very recent one in 2014, there's a mob killing taking place between Vietnamese and Cambodia, but Khmer at that time. So it's like, it just say because of the the word, and then they a mob just coming out and instantly killing that. So we're beaten to death. So we really caught us into we're really interested in that, how this is happening instantly. What are the things that is the triggers, and what are the root causes of all that thing? So what we're trying to approach this issue is that we know from history and everything, historians, newspapers, especially foreign newspapers, talking about this issue, but nothing else from the community. So how we approach it is that we want to do some research and listening and understanding what's going on with the communities. I mean, what are the community respond to this issue? What is their reaction? So we conduct research on that, and we're using that to inform our own intervention and action, because what we want to see a world is that interethnic harmonies. So we work with all ethnicity across the countries on how are we going to forming that harmony within the country. So we have learned that everyone seems to have some sort of discrimination against the others. So we use all what we have learned. This is just one of our research participating action research, and we use what is called the listening methodology, which we then localize it and name it as a facilitative listening design. It's a methodology that we use to really discuss very sensitive issue, because when it is sensitive, it's hard to have a camera, have a pens, or have a questionnaire ready going to the community. That is not possible. So that's how we conducting it. And we use all these lessons learned to inform our own actions. We have dialogue, for example, with all of the ethnic people. Dialogue with all the ethnic people in here, and then we learn that everyone from Cham Muslim to indigenous to people out there, they all have some sort of discrimination against them, and then they share that. And then after they do that, they feel like, well, originally I think I don't like that because they're different from me. But after learning some sort of that, they kind of feel like, well, we're just the same as human beings, even though we are different. With the same needs and the same concerns and issues that are happening against us. So, and then we're using that to, like having collective action with people, doing work together as an inter-ethnic groups, and also, do some exploration and learning outdoor in the community and trying to be in touch. Because what we have learned from the field is that, for those who have connection with the so-called the others, seem to have less stereotyping against the others. And especially from our listening itself, we have a group of young people, in fact, who go there and listen to the people. And they originally have perception toward the other group because they are coming from the so-called difference group. And then after these few months of engagement with each other, they somehow sneak and say, you know what? I think that they're just the same like me. I thought they're so different. They have these like myths inside, but now I really think they're just different. So that type of things that we learn from the communities, and that is how it's informed us in these actions forward. So that is very briefly that for us, we are not only using experiential learning outdoor, using all these learning to inform our own action, but also how are we going to engage with the community as a whole. So we also try something artistic like comics, that type of thing, using the story from the field and in a more empathetic way. So then we can probably trigger our empathy toward the so-called the other. Stuff like that. This is just one strategies that we has been doing. And also, in earlier this year, we also tried out some artistic work by collaborating with the Peace Mask Project in Japan, trying out, like bringing this to Cambodia and see how that can really let the communities be part of all this. And then actually saying that, every day we're wearing the mask of identities, who we are, the mask of gender, the gender mask, all of these masks that we're wearing as our own identity. But beneath all these masks are we taking off? We're just human, the same faces, we have the same, all that thing. So how are we going to reflect that and allow the communities themselves, the people who engage with us, to feel it from the inside, focusing on themselves as a human being? And because only we can be empathetic with ourselves, we can be more empathetic with others as well. So that is just very shortly about us. Thank you so much, and it's time for Q&A. Thank you.
Well, as one of the co-hosts today, I'm going to take the opportunity to ask a couple of the first questions, and then we'll open it up more broadly. Thank you for that overview. It sounds, you make it sound easy, I guess is what I'm trying to say. You have a great formula and great tenets. But can you talk a little bit about what is it like going into communities where there is gender-based violence, or where you're trying to reach youth? Because I imagine you have a very grassroots approach, a very community-based approach, and as you said, sometimes you go into communities and the leaders are all men. How do you approach that situation, coming in saying we have this program, we have this PowerPoint, or we have this program for you? Tell us a little bit more about that.
Well, that's interesting questions, and I think it's really important to build a trust. And trust and relationship building is the key. And when we go in there, it's not just about, we have a program to be with you, and no, it's more very community focused. Go in there, engage and talk to people, and sometimes we receive resistance. People don't want to engage with us. It's really challenging as well. So we go from one community to the others, and also trying to understand what's going on out there. So it's challenging, of course, but at the same time, as we show our honesties and that our passion, we want to contribute into improving the communities. So I will share that needs, that concern, and that issue, and then we somehow to click, and then we can collaborate on each other, and it building on years and years and years of collaboration with each other and working on the community. It's not just something we just do for one and then they don't trust us anymore and stuff like that. So it's really building on these partnership, collaboration, and focusing on the communities. Yes, and when there are resistance, we need to ensure that we respect and we understand where they're coming from, especially with as we engage with men also. There's also, we engage with men with LGBT group as well, so as our partners and network as well. So it's all about showing that respect, and as I show you is our core value with that three things, the W and P and M. So it's our core value in that one, and we believe in nonviolence, and that we show respect when we communicate with people, and we need to well train ourselves to have that. So then we believe that by upholding that value, we manage to really engage with people and communicate with people in an honest way and empathetic way.
So the empathy and the respect, all that you teach to others is how you approach things yourself. So you're really walking the talk, for sure.
We're really trying to walk in that talk.
Yeah,
yes.
That's wonderful.
It's really a challenging time, it's very challenging to not just trying to be that one, So then that's why we need to be very mindful in the way we do as a practitioner and as the sole believer of the gender equality and peace building. So we need to really be very mindful of every step that we are doing. So the action that we do, and really, reflecting on what we think as well. So these are reinforcing each other, and we need to keep checking that. So that's what we're trying to do. It's a learning process, yes.
Yeah, it's a process. My next question is around your work with youth, maybe in particular with girls, and how the way you talk about the role of women in the household, and that's a generation to generation stereotype and feel and belief in what they should be doing, and that violence is okay. How do you break that cycle? How do you work with girls in particular and their moms to break that cycle?
So in the community, we when we have training, we brought, because when they come, not only just female who come in, but also females say, I want my husband to come too.
Mm-hmm.
So then sometimes they come as a couple.
Mm-hmm.
So then they come as a couple and they learn that together, because sometimes it's really hard when one, okay, I know that I got empowered, I know my rights and everything, and then we go back home, and then the other don't know anything about this issue and not yet aware about this issue, and then they got into fight and stuff, So then sometimes we need to take a more holistic way, engaging that, but at the same time we're also engaging with youth. So I think it's about, it's really a process. It's not taking only for one time. It's an attempt to continue learning on this process as they need to be aware of that issue, and that it is need to accept that it's an issue.
Right.
Because right now is that they don't see it as an issue, and that is the problem. So once they think it's an issue and they got passionate about this, and then I think the next step, they will take action by themselves. I think that's the key things. So that is what we approach in our training, in our engagement with the communities. And we try to use variety of innovative techniques, like forum theaters and all these things that can allow people to be in the shoe of the others, so then they can feel that moment, what is it like to be different, and that to suffer from all of these things. So for us, our approach to break down that cycle is through that, with the perception and all that thing. And next step, we believe they will take that actually, bring that with them and moving forward.
That's great. Good. So my last question is, in Global Washington, we had an event called Defending the Defenders, looking at human rights activists around the world, and that last year was one of the deadliest years for human rights activists. And the panel discussion was fascinating because it talked about brave people all over the world that don't consider themselves activists. They are doing community-based work. They're doing work that they just feel is the right thing to do within their communities, and have done it in hard circumstances. But so my question for you is, do you consider yourself an activist?
Yeah, we are very active. And advocate. Yes, of course. Doing with the gender advocate, we can consider us that, and also as a feminist as well. So we're working also with these communities. But in fact, I think in Cambodia, there's an issue with that term activist. So activism and all that thing, because that will consider as those who oppose the state and all that thing, So it's making it feel like that term seems to be negative things. So I think it's not about the term. In fact, it's about how we live that activism within ourselves and making it to actions. So sometimes I think right now, after all these issues taking place in the countries, there is less like, well, it's probably something that it's nice to be called globally, but I think back at the community, sometimes they don't want to be, like in terms of those who are human rights activists and all that things. So it's carries some thought of negative things sometimes, But I think it's only in a certain issue dealing with human rights, dealing with all that thing, that especially in the developing countries, that with not in terms of the good governance is a challenge, and democracy is another challenge, then it's really difficult for that one. Yes, but we consider ourselves as a gender advocates. Yes,
That's great.
activism in ourselves, in actions.
Yeah, in action. I like that new definition really of activism. Advocates that are doing action. I like that. I like that too. So I'd love to open it up for others to ask questions as well. Bob?
So, as Kristen mentioned, it's hard work, and you're taking on large issues, gender violence being as pervasive as it is, or response to the Pol Pot regime and the violence that took place. So how do you keep your own center? What practices do you use that keep you centered?
That's interesting. It's continuing, ongoing practices every day. It's, I think, it's the belief and the belief in the core value that we're trying to stick on to. So, yeah, we all human. We all got angry. We all these, and at some point, all that things happen. But I think it's a consciousness of practicing it. So for us, we use the principle of nonviolent communications as our core thing in communicating with people who have different opinion from us and all that thing, how we can request people to in a nonviolent way and compassionate way. So it's really hard. It's a practice that we're doing every day to bring us to the center. It's, and sometimes we receive resistance and all that thing. We got anger, we got all these things, but I think it's very important to keep checking in ourselves as the core value and the belief that we having in, and that's brought me to centers. So the belief and the value, the core value of nonviolence of actions. Throughout these years that I've been with women peacemakers, at some point, when there's very tough things, not with the work, we are actually a small organizations and there's a lot of work that we need to do, and then I also have my reproductive role back at home as a mother, as a wife, in a conservative family and all that things. Sometimes it's really hard, almost at point that I want to quit and everything. I know there's so many reasons back at home that want me to get back and reserving my, safe comfort zone as a mom and all that things, but then there's only that one thing and that principle and value that brought me back, and that I want to do something for the society, that I can't just be that small pieces contributing to the whole. So I think that brought me back to things, and the story that I have gone through, it also inspiring me, and not just only these principles, but also seeing some sort of small impact change that happened with our communities and with our target groups. It continued to inspiring us to do some things. So that brought me to be in a center and trying to work on this journey.
Hey, I'm curious when you said it's quite common that you do more holistic work with the men and the women, often together. And I'm curious how the empowerment situation works and how women then are able to engage with their fathers or their husbands or their male sons, and how that interaction can be trained between those relationships, and how you encourage that.
Yeah, for us is that even we notice when there are presence of their relative coming and staying in the training, women tend to be very quiet. So we also have a sessions on speak up sessions, sometimes during that trainings, that what the men want to talk to the female and what the women want to talk to the men, for example, and all that things to encourage that speak up moment and talk about the issue and stuff. So it's just one particular example during the trainings, but at the same time, we try a more empathetic approach. For example, some very small activity like ask them to close their eyes and imagine that they were in a, situation where, in a rice field, for example, where everything was so green and everything was so nice, but later on they look at themselves, they are so yellow. Everything is yellow in them, and they were so different, and then everyone was staring and were wanting to beat them because of they becoming yellow and stuff. So using this type of example and also activities, energize activity to reflect on that, I think this is something that we trying to help them to feel at the moment that if they were a wife, this is their experience. If they were a husband, this is their experience. How can we engage that? Because I think at the end of the day, in terms of gender equality or in terms of, in the family, it's all about family and harmony in the family. So we really don't want to be oppressive of the other, because it's all about feminism. Feminism is all about against the oppressions. So we are not really want to oppress the other. It's all about we are equal as a human being in dignity and in rights. So that is something that we continue to engage and to tell the message to the people, because there's a lot of confusion back at home as well. When we work with men, young boys and stuff, they would just say, gender is a women issue. So it's women things. Women work, and then when there's training, they say, I don't want to go. Why? I'm a man, How can I go to a gender workshop? It's not just for me. It's for women to protect herself. So then, as we engage with them, talk to them, listen to why they're thinking like this. So I'm trying to understand from their view, because we all know that men also suffer some sort of oppression as a man as well. This gender role have all these stereotyping against them as well. So from that we can engage. We need to engage, because otherwise it's really hard for us to move forward in terms of both men and female, both men and women need to partner with each other toward gender equality. So that we engage through those training, so in short, but also at the same time, we continue to give messages that we are all the same and we are not oppressing anyone, and that we just want equality with everyone. So, and we continue doing that through a campaign and all of these things, raising awareness on the social media, using the sign that also being delivered by the boys and the men as well, not just from females speaking up. So that is the thing that we try to build up this discussion and dialogue among the people, among the stakeholders, specifically from men as well. So of course we receive resistance from that as well. So that is but we still have hope, and that's the approach that we've been doing. And we believe that only by doing so we can really build up those support and engagement from everyone. And that gender work is not just women's work, it's a work of everyone. Yes, please, Alan.
If we were in one of Hank's workshops now, some of us got to see last year, we'd all be writing out on big sheets of paper affirmations about what we just heard. And she would be engaging us in processing what we heard and giving feedback to others and showing what we thought. So there's a lot of interactivity going.
Are there also just women's only groups that you do, and also women and men in that?
Yes. So in that community we have women support group as well, and then we have groups of everyone together.
Okay. Sorry, Alan, I didn't mean to interrupt you. Did you want to?
Yeah, I was going to ask, having lived in Cambodia for a little bit, I know how important family is and how important sort of older relatives are. A lot of times the young married couple will live with their parents. So
Same
I sort
to
of
me.
Exactly. So I wondered, and I'm not sure if maybe you've touched on it, how, because it's great engaging the married couple, but what about the older generation? How do you engage them to show benefit to this program? And then as well, if maybe you had an impactful story that you could share as well of how this work has led to a change in a community?
So I think over the past decade, that's what we've been doing with the communities, and not just recently married couple, but also the senior people as well in the communities. That's what we've been doing, and trying to contribute to changing of that attitude and perceptions. So we saw some sort of change in terms of that as well. But recently, I think something that we haven't touched on is the intergenerational type of dialogues between the younger generation and the later generations, because they have gone through completely different experience. All of them, some senior people, they gone through the Khmer Rouge time, so they've been living during a generation that there is no school, that there is correct for female to do this and do that, for example. And then now with the younger generations, more than half of the population are so young, and then they got with all these like globalization concepts and all these things, they have completely different idea, and then with all these concepts of gender equalities, changing of these gender stereotyping, it's really, really difficult. And we have not yet been implementing that, but we're looking forward to really seeing the engagement between the old, seniors and the younger generations, and how they can share perspective on that, and how they foster this type of healthy parentings or all that type of conversation. So we're also looking forward to that engagement. Yes.
And how do you measure the impact that you're having on a community? What do you look at the end of the day with your 5 staff, and what markers do you look at that actually behaviors are changing, that attitudes are changing?
So we actually do interview with the people that we're working with, and then we talk to the community authorities out there, and then they said, oh wow, after like decades, it's not a 1-year work, it's like decades of work. And then they saw some sort of change in their community. That's what we heard from the leaders, community leader out there. And what we do mostly with the very qualitative type of work. That's what we do over the years using interviews. But what we do is also the immediate change, increase of knowledge. For example, after the training, there is a pre and post test, for example, seeing whether the knowledge has been increased or not, and all that things, and especially watching our observations. It's about these observation of the people. Previously, when they engage, they seem to have this type of attitude and behavior, and now after this, they seem to have something have changed. So it's from observation, interview, focus groups, and talking to the leader out there, and how that feels like, and that's how we start to measure change. But of course, change doesn't happen within 1 or 2 years. It's really a process that we continue to observe and engage with the communities. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for sharing that. I'm amazed at your hope and inspiration for the future. It makes me feel like I need to be a little more optimistic.
I was going to say, would you run for the rest?
I know, yeah. It is. It's inspiring, and I think your approach to the work that you're doing is really spreading something so deep within you that you believe in. So, and we can see that. So, we wish you all well in
Thank
your
you so
work.
much.